All in favor, please stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please?
Deanna?
Yes.
Allen? Here. Rodriguez?
Here.
Bill?
Yes.
Sharp?
Here.
Kurt?
Here.
O'Loughlin?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. Do you have any same public comments that you're aware of?
I do not.
Okay. Next, I will need a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda that approves the following: the minutes of the December 14th, 2020 regular meeting, Lucky 10 Lanes Class C liquor license, and Sunday sales, January 1st, 2021 through December 30th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Second, Hannah.
I think John already did, Deb.
Okay.
All those
Can't
in
hear
favor
him.
say
Aye.
Aye.
opposed, the same. Motion is carried.
Point of clarification about
Next,
the December 14th meeting. When we got the update out on the 11th, you mentioned that there was going to be an increase in the insurance from PDCM, and that there was also an increase when did you solicit more bids from the local?
We did not solicit other bids, it was just an estimate. We don't have that yet, we're just starting our renewal process. And it's an industry increase that we're talking about, just kind of across the board for the industry. But it is not, here's your insurance bill. So
But have you checked with the locals to see if that?
it isn't about, the insurance that we have is through ICAP.
Right.
So whether it's brokered through PDCM or John Evers or anybody else, it's the same. And the cost is the same because it's coming through ICAP. It's just. the
I
broker
got
for-
notified of a 10% increase.
What's that?
I got notified of a 10% increase.
No, PDCM said that the industry standard right now, the average to expect currently, based on the trends that we've seen in 2020, this is what we think that we're going to see. I just put it out there as information because second quarter of 2020, the increase was, from memory, I think they said about 14% industry-wide. Fourth quarter, they expected that increase to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 11% industry-wide. That's just a generic industry number that they're seeing. ICAP and PDCM said for budget purposes, you should look at a 10% increase. We won't know until we go through our whole renewal process, but at some point we have to build a budget around what we think our
And that's
numbers are going to
exactly
be.
why I brought it up now.
So, no, it is not a PDCM number, it is not an ICAP number, it's based on where is the industry going currently. And there's only a couple of people that can quote our insurance for us, as a municipality. Travelers is one, ICAP is one. There used to be one called Cornhusker, but they're not really in the state anymore.
I spoke with Dennis Allen, he noted 2 or 3 that could be, provide that coverage.
Well, and that's what it is, 2 or maybe 3 that can provide coverage for municipalities.
Right.
But again, ICAP and Travelers are the 2 main players in the state of Iowa. They cover the vast majority of all municipalities, whether it be cities or counties. And I think they even get into things like school districts, but I'm not familiar with schools.
So, but we haven't explored the cost, the unit cost, or the total cost per agency, whether it's PDCM or Evers or.
That, Evers and PDCM have nothing to do with our cost of insurance. They don't dictate the insurance whatsoever. There's
So
simply
they both provided at the same cost.
the cost is passed down from ICAP or travelers. It's not a PDCM, it's not a travelers discussion. It is, I mean, it's from ICAP or travelers, not from a John Evers or a DNL or whoever you want to look at for brokerage firms. They do not set the premiums for it.
Are we talking about health or business?
It's property and casualty.
Okay. The other, now, we also receive dividends for years we're with ICAP. So that would be an incentive to not leave ICAP because we do get dividends every year because it's an insurance
We didn't get one
cost.
last year, Bob.
Yes, we did.
We did.
54, almost $5,500 last year. Now,
About the same as what he,
what Evers didn't give it to us.
well,
It came
whoever
from,
gave it to us now.
it came from ICAP. Again, the insurance is from ICAP. It's the community's insurance pool. Evers is the one that delivered it because he's been the broker. Again, it wasn't about Mr. Evers and good, bad, indifferent. He was simply the broker for the insurance through ICAP. ICAP does not directly broker the insurance. They go through a local broker. And in this case, with Evers or PDCM, same difference. But that won't affect our costs one way or the other.
Thank you.
Okay, if I go on? Okay, next I need a motion to approve claims for payment.
So moved.
Second.
And a second to approve claims. Any questions?
With regard to the, 6,600, was that strictly for the airport project since they're the insurance?
No, that would be airport related. That's,
Okay, that's my word.
there's two different projects that they've worked on out there.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. Okay, next under petitions from the public, we have a discussion or information to be shared in regards to our audit. Speaking on that?
No, we do have on your dais, two documents for, that pertain directly to our annual audit. We have, on our Ring Central meeting, Andrew Grice from, Bergen KDV, who will be, walking through this discussion. Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
You've got the floor.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council for having me here tonight. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and go through a PowerPoint that summarizes our audit report. To begin, I just wanted to talk through our independent auditors report. A reminder that the financial statements are management's responsibility, and it's our job as your auditor to come in, test, examine, and look at the underlying documentation to support the numbers in your financial statements and the related disclosures, and ultimately give an opinion on your financial statements. And happy to report that we are giving an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the cash basis of accounting, which is the best opinion that we can give as your auditor. And what that does is provide assurance that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Because the independents, like our telecommunications entity, which is a discretely component unit of the city, presents on a full accrual basis of accounting, we do give an adverse opinion on that component unit since it doesn't have financial information available that is consistent with the cash basis of accounting that the city reports on. We also issue our report on government auditing standards, and that report talks about internal control, our consideration of internal control, and also compliance. We had no compliance findings to report there, but two significant deficiencies in internal control that relate to segregation of accounting duties related to the fire department and the library. We also report on Iowa Code of Compliance and had 3 findings there. One related to a donation, which comes into play when look at public purpose expenditures, one related to the urban report, and then one related to keeping copies of checks that was specific to the library. We also issue our communications letter, which also talks about our consideration of internal control and also goes over some other required communications there. And it also includes our financial analysis. I will summarize here the financial analysis piece of it, and we're going to start with the general fund. And the general fund had disbursements that exceeded receipts by $351,000. And after transfers in and out and other financing sources, the general fund cash balance decreased by about $151,000. The city does have a fund balance policy that states that the city will have 25% of operating expenses in unassigned fund balance. And the unassigned fund at the end of the year was $957,000, and that represents about 24% of expenditures based on 2020 expenditure levels. The next chart shows the general fund receipts for the last 5 years, and these decreased about 1.1%, or about $1,000. The decrease was primarily due to receiving less interest revenue due to lower interest rates in 2020, and then also less charges for services related to the culture and recreation programs, and that relates to the pandemic. In addition to the receipts discussed here, the general fund also received cash from in the form of transfers from other funds, totaling about $459,000, as well as about $3,600 in proceeds from the sale of capital assets. The next chart shows the general fund disbursements for the last 5 years, and these increased about $323,000, or about 8.7%. And Public Works had the largest increase of $210,000, and that was due to an increase in sidewalk and parking repairs, as well as an increase in the garbage service costs. Public safety expenditures increased about $69,000 due to increased dispatching fees and increased patrol hours. All other categories were similar to the prior year. In addition to these disbursements, the general fund also transferred out cash to other funds, totaling $263,000 in 2020. Next, we'll take a look at the enterprise funds. In 2020, the water fund had an operating income of $376,000, just an $18,000 decrease from the prior year, so fairly consistent, as there were no major changes in operations in 2020. The sewer fund operating income was about $336,000 less than 2019. And that was primarily due to correcting an error in commercial billing for a particular customer late in 2019, and then also an increase in expenses for lift station repairs. So that really drove the decrease there. As always, I recommend continuing to monitor these funds to ensure that you continue to cover your operating costs of these funds. Next is the cash position of the enterprise funds. And you can see here the water fund, due to operations, there was an increase in cash positions from $2.8 million up to $3,161,000. The sewer fund also had an increase due to operations from $5.1 million up to about $5.8 million. And if we were to look at the unrestricted portion, there's a slightly less in the sewer fund. There's about $250,000 restricted for debt service, and the remaining net position there of about $5.6 million is unrestricted. The entire water fund portion is unrestricted for future capital needs and other operational purposes. The last slide that we'll look at is the capital projects fund. And this has various amount of capital related activity, and there's a significant amount of capital activity for various projects here in 2020 with various funding sources, some from bond issuances, some from intergovernmental reimbursements. But at the end of the year, there was a deficit cash position of $1.5 million. So continue to monitor this fund, ensure that this gets back up to a break even or positive position here in future years. That's a high-level summary of the financial results in our audit reports. I would like to open it up for any questions.
I did have a question. I noticed that you brought up the Independence Power and Light. That is an area that's totally separate from us, and I guess I thought that you kind of left it that somehow we should pay more attention to their income and expenditures, yet I don't think that's probably something we can do.
What we did was wanted to report on why we have that an adverse opinion related to that entity in your independent auditor's report. And we're required to do that because it is a discretely presented component unit of the city. And it has nothing really to do with the city's obligation in terms of monitoring it, but how we are required to report on it as your auditor.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's consistent with what the past audits have done as well, correct?
That's correct.
So overall, you didn't find us with any problems?
Nothing new from the prior year. So the lack of segregation of accounting duties were the only internal control related findings. Those findings are not unusual for a city of your size. There's always going to be you're not going to have a cost benefit of adding additional staff to help with reducing that finding. It's at a significant deficiency level, which is a mid-level finding. They're not at a material weakness level, which would be the most severe.
We always had that. We had a small company, and that was always, there's only so many people to go around.
Correct. Yep.
One thing that Andrew and I did have a conversation on that I'd bring up, talking about segregation of duties. The findings were centered primarily on library and fire department association, if you will. You'll note there's not a finding for segregation of duties in the city's operations, largely because of the actions that you and council have taken to separate out some of who's doing the checks and balances. And so Andrew had a good explanation for why that was removed. That's the first time in my experience in public sector that comment was removed, and it goes back to all of the work in the clerk's office, the council's activities, the government performance finance taking on a portion, the mayor taking on some duties there. So I applaud everybody for their efforts. Again, hard to do. It's difficult to reach that standard, but the opportunity for any of issues there really is minimized. I think that's paraphrasing what you told us, Andrew.
Yeah, I think so. It is not included in your audit report, which means it doesn't rise to that significant deficiency or material weakness level. The condition does exist. However, the city has taken measures to implement some compensating or mitigating controls to reduce it to that lower level of finding so that it's not in your report.
Thank you.
Not a big deal here, but on page 3 of the city communication letter, when it references the library, the last sentence, it references back to the fire department when it's a statement about the library, so it's just a typographical error. So you might want, I don't know if you need to correct that.
You said on page 3 of the audit report?
Communication letter.
The communication. Okay.
Where it talks about the library, then it references the fire department in the last sentence, so there's some of the typographical.
Oh, sure. No, I appreciate you pointing that out. We can have that piece corrected.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
I would like to compliment your report. I found it a little easier to read than some of our last couple of years.
Thank you.
And you hadn't done the last couple of years, so.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here tonight or being part of this and letting us know or giving your opinion. We appreciate your work.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, under hearings and ordinances, I need a motion to consider adopting the ordinance for the second time of the Chapter 75 ATV ordinance.
Second.
Who made the motion?
Jen,
Oh, you need to speak up, girl. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the second reading. Roll call, please.
Callahan?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Sharp?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
O'Laughlin?
No.
Hannah?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is carried. Next, I have, I need a motion to set January 11th at 6:30 PM for a public hearing on rezoning request.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to that degree. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. Under other business. Subject is water tower maintenance agreement. Motion is up to, whatever.
this is the maintenance agreement that we've discussed on the 3 water towers. We got our structural review back on the courthouse water tower, which states that it is in good structural condition. And working with Suez, they have presented us the proposal to do the ongoing maintenance of the water towers. There's about $1.3 million worth of deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed between the 3 towers combined. And that's spelled out in the report. Once that is complete, their proposal is to do that work over a 4-year period. We would pay for it interest-free over a 5-year period to spread out those costs. At the end of the 5th year, then it would become strictly a maintenance contract, which is at just under $60,000. They do show some CPI escalators built in, but it's based on actual CPI in the year of the contract renewal. It is a year-to-year contract. You can terminate the contract at any time. However, we are responsible for any work that has been done up to the point of that because of the interest-free component of the spreading those payments out. We do have some minor work to be done. There are some more significant items that have to be addressed, but City Attorney's Office has reviewed the contract. They did ask for some changes, which Suez was gracious enough to make. They also included washing the underside of the MHI tower. They built that in, and Melinda Kurtz is on the in the meeting here listening as well, so I want to make sure we recognize that she went to bat for us, and we were able to add that to it. No relation to Councilman Kurtz.
Take any credit, John?
Anyway, the city attorney has said that they approve of the language that we have built into here currently.
I thought it was a very good report, and I guess the things that they brought up in there are I thought they actually are kind of significant when you talk about some of where the paint chip is and what's kind of, metals exposed in a couple of them, and the one you can inside look up and see holes in the roof. I'd make the motion that we approve this agreement.
I'd second it.
Okay, any other discussion? A motion and a second to approve the maintenance agreement for the water towers.
Will these repairs, will they give us a line item and time frame? Which, I mean, for the cost, I'm concerned about that, of course, but I'm also concerned about a time frame. Obviously, there's a hierarchy, what's most needed, what's the least needed, but are they gonna submit something like that to us with time frame?
Well, that is built into their proposal. They'll show us exactly when they're going to do it based on the 5 years, which water tower gets it first, and, MHI tower actually gets, hold this up just to make sure. MHI tower gets the attention first because of some of the significant issues. Tier 1 MHI gets an interior renovation of the tank itself, and that's the most pressing need. Year 2, we are doing interior and exterior of the courthouse tank, as well as the interior dry portion of the street shop tank. Year 3, we're doing the exterior of MHI. Year 4, we are doing the exterior of, interior and interior of the street tank, the actual water tank itself. So by the time we get done with year 4, we've done the internal and external of all 3 tanks. To keep the cost in line and level, they agreed to carry the cost of those 4 years of work over 5 years. We get an annual report from them as far as what they do. I mean, again, in here they tell us what they're going to do each year, but we get an annual inspection report from them as well, a written document.
But that's in addition to that.
Correct. And that's something where DNR has not pressed the issue hard yet, but we expect it. It's only a matter of time.
Right.
And we're gonna have to show what we're doing to take care of these tanks and have it documented.
And what the public needs to know is the rates, water rates are probably gonna go up because this is significant payoff compared to what we have been.
The rates would not go up directly related to this. There are several pieces in the water system.
Right.
And part of the SRF loan document, which includes the Highway 150 infrastructure improvements,
Right.
we have to do a rate study.
We have several projects that are contingent on the water and sewer funds.
And again, I'm not gonna tell you they will go up, they won't go up until we do that rate study based on all of these. I wouldn't go down that road until we do that rate study. This actually saved the city about $1.5 million because we had in the CIP, money for a new water tower. By going through this process, we identified the fact that we don't need a new water tower and we can maintain what we have for less money than replacing the tower. And we get all 3 towers maintained.
What's the estimated cost of the new tower right now?
Well, the last I talked to, about 1.5 million. I think Melinda told me it was in that 1.5, 1.6, in the tower that they, were working with. I've talked to people that have put them in for 1.3 to 1.8. So, depends on what type of tower, how big of a tower, some variables.
Okay, I do have a motion and a second to approve the maintenance agreement. I'd like to have a roll call on this, please.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Hurt,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
yes,
Callahan. Yes.
Thank you, motion is carried. Next under new business is the 2020 Community Survey Results Report.
This is the findings from the community survey that we just completed. I put it out here to make you aware of it, give you a copy of the report. Moving into the new year, we will put it out on our website and social media and get it out there, but I wanted you to have a chance to take a look at the report. And like I said, this just came in last week, so I wanted to get it out to you as quick as
Did this have, remember when we did the last one, you needed a certain number for it to have a validity?
Yes.
Or did this one follow the same procedure?
Yes, it did. And just like we did on the last one, after they completed the random survey portion, they did post it publicly for almost a month, so people log in and fill it out without going to the random. So anybody in the community had a chance to participate. And the findings are in here as well. You'll find them to be very consistent with the random. There was not a lot of variation.
And we're planning on using these results as part of our planning processes.
This is part of helping us set up our budget for next year and moving forward. Part of our discussion on the budget will be to take a look at our strategic directions that are on the wall here and comparing what survey results are. Hopefully that will help guide us.
Okay. Don't need any motions or anything else.
No,
Information. Okay.
it's just for your information. One thing that is nice about this one that we did not have on the last one is they did compare the general areas of the 2017 survey to the 2020 survey, but they also benchmarked us against the national results. So communities across the nation that have participated in the community survey over the last 5 years, they get a percentage or a range of responses, and it'll show you where we're higher or lower than the national competition.
Okay, next on the agenda is our 2021 City Council meeting schedule. That's just for your information also. Not a whole lot of difference from what we're normally used to, other than a question mark for December 26th for the second council meeting in December.
I just wanted to show you, kind of set the expectation for meetings and when to look for meetings. There are a couple of council meetings that happen on Tuesdays instead of Mondays, so you can lock in some of that into your long-range planning. The question mark is December 26th. Every year we have a question about the second meeting in December, so I threw it out there. We are moving the Christmas holiday recognized to the 23rd and 24th, or 22nd and 23rd, actually, Thursday, Friday before the weekend, because the 25th falls on Saturday. I could be off my date, I apologize. Anyway, we're doing the Thursday, Friday recognition, not so much just because of Christmas, but also affects the New Year, the following week, and the way it fits in with payroll and some of the other activities of the city. Moved it to the Thursday, Friday recognition instead of Friday morning.
I kind of thought maybe the mayor would be campaigning and let us have that off to get the council to vote for it.
I'm not making that until I'm that far in advance. I may not even be here, you never know. That's just for your information also. I don't know if we want to go into reports before our closed session,
Yes, please.
since it's on the agenda afterwards. Is there any council committee reports or any members that have anything they'd like to report tonight before we go into closed session?
Bonnie, I had one question. Do you have it decided who's going to be on what committees after the first of the year?
the way this last year has been, I have not looked at making any changes because it's been kind of strange as it is, and especially with some of the extra committees that you guys are on that's outside of the council, and a lot of those haven't even met all year long. So if any of you have any preferences, I've heard from a couple of you as far as your preferences, but I won't officially make that announcement until our first meeting in January, or possibly if the meeting will hold at that point. So,
Thank you.
anybody else have anything?
I guess I just wanted to thank so many people. We had kind of a family crisis at Christmas. A lot of citizens, a lot of people, council members, words of support and prayers, and that everything's going well now, and I just wanted to thank people for that.
Well, that turned out as good as it did. We don't have any department heads here tonight, do we?
We have Mr. Dallenbach on line.
Okay. Justin, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right. First thing I'd like to discuss is Officer Ludovic, he graduated from the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy last week, and this, well, the 18th, so this last week was his first week of training. So he is a certified officer now and is starting his FTO. So that's the biggest thing we have in our department as of right now. Second thing that is important to bring up to you guys is our speed cameras that we have in the community. As of some training I just went through recently, there were 265, if not more, violations within this last month. But I have to inform you guys that there have been no warnings sent out because of these violations at this time. There's been some glitches that we've come across within the system, that communication stuff hasn't gone through completely, or in one of the locations there was an issue with the description of the location and the speed limit. So those warnings and stuff have not been sent out. So at this time there had not been any of them that had been mailed out to anybody. I've discussed with the gentleman's name is Rich, and another lady, Michelle from Gatso, and then because of the hiccups that we've come across, in our best interest would be to extend the warning period for another 30 days to make sure that everything gets worked out before we start actually sending out citations for this. We would hate to send out warnings just before the first of the year, and then all of a sudden the first of the year start sending out citations.
It's our intent at this point to extend that warning period and continue to work through any of the glitches that they have found and are running into. We want to make sure that before any actual citations are issued, we have it nailed down to where we know that it's doing the right thing in the right manner. One of the issues that created a little bit of a concern is they had a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone listed as 35. And we thought that had been corrected. That didn't show up until we got into the actual training, or Dustin got into the training, and that showed up again. So we got to get in there and make sure that all of those details are worked through. And so it's our intent at this point to extend that, give us another 30 days to work through that process and make sure that everything's working smoothly.
Just for public knowledge, can you reference the tolerances again at each location as far as speed limit is concerned?
In the school district, during school hours in morning and afternoon, speed limit is 20. Citations are issued beginning at 26 for those 1 hour blocks, morning and afternoon. Otherwise, it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone, and it has a 10-mile-an-hour threshold. So at
11 over, they'll start citing.
41, they start getting a citation. So other than the school zone, it goes up. You know, at 11 over, it starts issuing.
Is that the same for the one by the?
Dairy Queen is the same, and it'd be the same for the, mobile unit.
I guess my comment to that would be, you know, there's been a lot of chatter, I think, and people, you know, complaining about the placements of the cameras or the cameras in general. And, you know, when you're looking at a 10-mile-an-hour tolerance, and you've got to be going 45 into 35 to get a ticket, and I think that's a pretty fair number. And that's pretty high, and I think it's not unreasonable at all. And you really shouldn't be going 45 and 35 anyway,
Right.
regardless of whether there's a camera there or not. So I think there's a lot of misconception out there about what that number is. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because 10 miles is, you know, that's a pretty fair tolerance. A lot of places lower than that.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. Dustin, when you started, you said you had a number of how many that looked like there was violations or something to that degree. Do you know how much of a violation they were, how much more they were going?
No, I can't give you how much over they were going in that location because we didn't get through every single one of them because of the training or because we decided not to send them out. I can tell you though, there were 265 when we looked at it, and that's with the misinformation on the system of being 35 instead of 30. I will guarantee you that there's probably over 300 if that would actually been at 30.
That does not include the mobile unit that was out because that did not pick up their system yet, so.
Yep, that was another glitch that was coming up for some reason. We had the mobile unit out twice in 2 different locations, but the information from that didn't get transferred back to the main server from GATSO, and they're looking into that now to figure out why that wasn't communicating correctly.
Or which site is getting, are they getting equal amounts of tickets, or is one site getting more than the other?
I didn't have a chance, and I don't have that system yet to look in to see which one is where or which one has more than the other. Just based on normal traffic volume and so forth, I believe that it would be the school zone area that would have the more warnings at this time.
One other comment that I saw out there on the public is regarding traffic out there by 150 and Dairy Queen and you know, the pedestrian traffic. And I think after our traffic studies that we did, what was it, an average of 2,500 cars every 15 minutes or something like that? I mean, it is a fair amount of cars.
It's a big number.
It's a big number, and you know, those who were talking about it need to realize there's a lot of cars out there, and they need to slow down because there are pedestrians sometimes. So.
Find out what times of day some of those violations are, and that type of stuff. I smile every time I go across the bridge, okay, even though I'm doing a speed limit.
Chief, the discrepancy between the 35 and the 30, is that right there by Dairy Queen where it goes from 35 down to 30?
No, this would have been in that school zone area. They had it set at 35 when it should have been set at 30. The one that is at Dairy Queen is set at 35 and is pointing in a 35 school or speed zone area.
Because it goes from 35 to 30 to the 25 eventually, right?
Right, 25 is not up until into the more of the residential area, probably halfway up into town. But it in that Dairy Queen area coming across the bridge, it's 35. Once you pass Dairy Queen, get up to where the cemetery roughly is, or where that hair cutting place is, then it drops down to 30.
I found it drops down. I take that several times. So, out of your 2,500 count, I was probably, let's see, that was in one day's time. I was probably a dozen of those. Me alone. I don't know. My car can do it without me. Okay, Blake, I see that your name's on here. You have anything from the fire department you'd like to report?
Nothing from the fire department.
Nothing? Okay, he's still silent.
You just chatted in.
Oh,
said
okay,
nothing.
all right. Nothing else from council members?
One other question, I think Juan had some good ones. The other thing that I have heard quite a bit about is where is the money going from these tickets? It goes into the general fund at this point, isn't it?
Yes, any of our fine revenues currently, it all goes into the general fund. The general fund covers most of the departments of the city. And, that's per state, chart of accounts, I mean, that's where it's gonna go. How the council uses it, that's gonna be like any other general fund dollars, up to the council.
I know I had seen some chatter that, well, we should use it for a resource officer at the high school, the school system, but the income's probably not gonna be anywhere near what we need for our share of a resource officer, particularly if people start following the speed limit.
Well, at 300 citations a month, we have a chance.
Let's hope we don't have that.
No, the goal of the speed cameras is not to raise revenue, it is to slow the traffic down, it's to get people to adhere to the existing traffic law. I mean, that's been the stated goal, that's still the goal, that would be our preference.
I should also, I should also mention that on Thursday at 6 o'clock, I did ring my bell. I heard no other bells throughout the whole community. I think I was the only crazy lady out there in the cold, ringing a bell for 2 minutes, but that's all
I'm not
right.
sure when I went out there and rang it.
I
you could
helped
hear
Santa
across-
come along, so
just right
if
across.
he left you presents, you should thank me and you're welcome.
Earlier that day, Benita,
What?
earlier that day, it was not at your time, but on Walton's, that Daisy cow, whatever it was, it rang its bell.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
But I think that was earlier in the day.
It
I don't
was,
think
that's what I'm saying, it was
yeah,
earlier,
wasn't
but
6 o'clock.
Sid
Fine.
reported it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had 6 bells, in case someone joined me, I could hand them a bell and they could stand 8 feet away. Nobody joined me, so that's all right. Won't be the first time. Okay, since we're done with all that, let's go to the closing of, doing a closed session for Iowa Code 21.51C to discuss strategy, counsel in a matter that's presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent. So we need everyone that's on
We're gonna
Central
close.
hang up.
We're gonna close this meeting, as soon as the council votes to go into closed session. The Ring Central meetings will not come back on until we go back into open session.
Right.
We will take the YouTube channel down for the closed session, as well as the streaming channel. And, Deb, I think we talked about it, you'll call back into the conference room.
Yes.
Okay. So if anybody wants a quick break, now's your time.
I would suggest you make your motion to go into closed session.
Okay, so you need a motion to enter into a closed session for the Iowa Code, okay?
I make the motion.
Second.
Okay, and I need a roll call on that motion, second. Carol?
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Allen, yes, Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you, motion is carried, so we are now going into closed session.